Imagine your soon-to-be stepson accuses you of a career-ending crime, and your partner tells you to just get over it. This 48-year-old teacher walked out on his 34-year-old girlfriend after her teenage son started casually calling him a pedophile. The writer of our story and his ex-girlfriend, Heather, are both teachers. They originally got together 4 years ago when he was 44 and she was 30. Heather has a son who is now 15 years old, and for the vast majority of their relationship, the writer and the teenager had a perfectly polite, respectful dynamic. There is a slightly messy coincidence in their backstory, though. The kid's biological dad, Dan, is 35 and actually happens to be a former student of the writer. However, Dan met Heather when they were away at college in a totally different city, and the writer never even met Heather until she was a fully grown 30-year-old adult. Everything in their household was relatively peaceful until the writer and Heather started seriously discussing getting married. The absolute second marriage was on the table. The teenager completely spiraled, aggressively mouthing off and confronting the writer, telling him that he could never replace his real dad. The writer has spent his entire career in education and has seen plenty of teenagers go through turbulent family transitions, so he calmly suggested to Heather that they look into individual and family therapy. But shortly after Christmas break, the kid escalated his behavior from standard teenage angst to a terrifying, potentially life ruining level. He began repeatedly calling the writer a pedophile. When the writer sat Heather down in private to explain that this specific word is a live grenade that could completely destroy his entire teaching career, she astonishingly brushed him off. She fiercely defended her son, claiming he was merely working through his complex emotions. Even after taking the issue to a joint counseling session, the teenager looked the writer in the eye and dropped the word again, smirking that the writer could have easily been his mom's elementary school teacher. With Heather entirely refusing to discipline her son or see the danger he was creating, the writer packed his bags, officially broke up with her, and moved out. Now, Heather and her parents are blowing up his phone, claiming he is wildly overreacting and demanding he slow down to give the kid a chance to catch up. He is turning to the internet to ask, am I the a-hole? Let us put this entire situation under a microscope. Is the writer just being too sensitive about an angry teenager throwing a tantrum? Absolutely not. Look at Heather's baffling reaction. She is not just some clueless parent who does not understand the real world. She is literally a teacher. She works in the exact same field and knows exactly what happens to an educator. The absolute second an accusation like that leaves a student's mouth and hits the school administration. Her complete refusal to shut this down is not just permissive parenting, it is active, gross negligence regarding her partner's safety and livelihood. Then consider the teenager. 15 is not 5. At 15 years old, you possess the cognitive awareness to know exactly what kind of nuclear bomb you are dropping on an adult's reputation. And let us not ignore the lurking shadow of the biological dad in the background. Dan Sr. is 35, described as a massive jerk, and it is highly probable that he is the one feeding this exact terminology to his son behind the scenes to actively sabotage the new relationship. This brings up a completely insane shift in modern culture. We are currently witnessing the absolute weaponization of severe criminal allegations by teenagers on the internet. As one highly observant commenter pointed out, there is a rampant trend on platforms like TikTok where teenagers genuinely believe that any age gap, even between two fully consenting adults in their 30s and 40s, is inherently predatory and immoral. They have completely lost the ability to think critically about context. We are infantilizing grown adults to the point where a 30-year-old single mother is somehow being painted as a helpless victim to a 44-year-old man. It completely dilutes the severity of actual horrifying crimes. When kids start using life-ruining terms as casual, everyday insults just because they saw a viral video, they are metaphorically firing a gun without understanding that the bullet is real, and it leaves behind a trail of total devastation. The internet jury was incredibly fired up about this specific dynamic. One person actually tried to hit the writer with the most bizarre, pseudo-spiritual hot take imaginable, claiming that the teenager was simply revealing the writer's own deep-seated subconscious insecurities. They basically told the writer to shore up his inner child and stop projecting, implying that words only hurt if you let them. The rebuttal to that absolute nonsense was swift, dark, and brutal. Multiple teachers and parents flooded the forum with horrifying real-life stories. One user recounted how a beloved teacher with a 41-year career was falsely accused by an angry student. Even though he was completely cleared of all charges, the sheer trauma and social stigma of the investigation took such a massive toll that he tragically ended his own life at 65. Another user sharply pointed out that false accusations are not just a social inconvenience. They trigger immediate, catastrophic legal protocols. If that 15-year-old casually drops that lie to a school counselor, the counselor is a mandated reporter who is legally forced to involve Child Protective Services and the authorities. By the time the dust settles and the police realize it was just a moody teen exaggerating a 14-year age gap, the writer's name would be permanently stained, his career nuked from orbit, and his life completely destroyed. The commenters universally agreed that Heather throwing her partner to the wolves just to avoid the inconvenience of parenting her teenager makes her incredibly toxic. The final verdict from the community is crystal clear. The writer is unequivocally not the a-hole. He dodged a massive, life-altering bullet by walking away when he did. Heather's son got exactly what he wanted. He successfully chased off the new guy and blew up the relationship. But the writer ultimately saved his own livelihood. If the ex-girlfriend's parents keep aggressively texting him to slow down and give the kid a chance, the writer needs to deliver one final, blistering reality check. He should reply with exactly this: I am an educator, and your daughter allowed her son to hurl a career-ending accusation at me repeatedly without a single consequence. I am not going to risk my freedom, my reputation, and my entire life to be the punching bag for a teenager who refuses to be parented. I strongly suggest you teach your grandson the legal definition of defamation before he ruins his own life. Do not contact me again. Then he needs to block the entire family, absolutely refuse any further contact, and never look back. What would you do in this terrifying situation? Would you have tried to stick it out and educate the kid? Or would you run for the hills the absolute first time that word left his mouth? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and do not forget to subscribe for more insane Reddit stories. Your little girl runs into the living room pretending to be a boy from her favorite television show, and your brother instantly diagnoses her as transgender, demanding you prepare for her transition. When you tell him she is literally just playing make-believe, he pulls the ultimate trump card. He is gay, so he automatically knows more about your child than you do. Let us dive into this absolute circus. The writer of our story today has a young daughter who is going through a massive, all-consuming imagination phase. She loves to pretend she is whatever character she just saw in a book or watched on television. Sometimes those characters are boys, and sometimes those characters are girls, but she always demands you address her completely in character. This is totally normal, completely healthy toddler behavior. One afternoon, she decides she is a little boy from a TV show she is currently obsessed with. She runs into the room while the writer is chatting with their brother. The writer smiles warmly and says, "There is my daughter." And the kid immediately fires back, "I am not your daughter. I am a boy, and I do not have any parents." The writer plays right along, completely unbothered, and begs for a hug anyway, which the kid graciously gives before running off to continue her solo orphan adventures. Wholesome, right? Well, the brother did not think so. The second the kid leaves the room, he turns to the writer with absolute deadpan seriousness and announces that the little girl is probably transgender, and the family needs to start preparing to support her through her transition. The writer laughs it off, saying she is literally just playing a game. But the brother doubles down. He crosses his arms and declares that because he is a member of the LGBTQ community, he inherently knows better than the actual parent. The writer pushes back, gently pointing out that while he might know a lot about being a gay man, this is their daughter, and they know her best. They remind him that she plays these exact kinds of games all the time. The brother refuses to let it go, insisting that this is exactly how it starts. The writer finally snaps, telling him that being gay does not make him an omniscient god of gender identity who knows everything. The brother throws a massive tantrum, accuses the writer of acting just like their close minded dad, rolls his eyes, and storms out of the house. Now the writer is sitting there wondering, am I the a hole for bursting his dramatic bubble? Is it possible the writer is deeply in denial? Could this child actually be dropping subtle, subconscious hints about their gender identity? Sure, anything is possible in the grand scheme of life. But look at the actual context of this specific interaction. The kid did not just say she was a boy. She explicitly stated she's an orphan with absolutely no parents. Unless the brother seriously thinks she is also transitioning into a literal orphan, he is entirely cherry-picking the child's fantasy to perfectly fit his own narrative. He completely ignored the second half of her sentence because it ruined his profound psychological diagnosis. So why is this uncle pushing so relentlessly hard to label a toddler? It is purely about control, ego, and attention. This brother suffers from a catastrophic case of main character syndrome. He has taken his sexual orientation and weaponized it into a loud personality trait that requires everyone around him to defer to his ultimate wisdom on all social issues. He does not actually care about the niece's well-being. He cares about being perceived as the enlightened, ultra-progressive savior of the family. He desperately wants to be the all-knowing oracle who recognized the subtle signs before the clueless heterosexual parents did. It is voluntary incompetence mixed with staggering arrogance. We actually get a little background from the writer later on in the forums, revealing that this brother is the youngest child who was hopelessly doted on by their mother. He constantly uses fake, exaggerated sensitivities to get out of doing basic adult chores, like claiming his sinuses are too sensitive to unclog a toilet or his shoulder hurts too much to walk the dog. He has been enabled his entire life to believe his feelings dictate actual reality, and now he is aggressively trying to project that unearned authority onto a child's innocent game of pretend. This entire debacle perfectly highlights one of the most exhausting types of people on the planet: the fiercely confident, completely childless parenting expert. We have all encountered this person in the wild. They have never changed a diaper. They have never stayed up for 3 days straight with a screaming, teething toddler, but they listened to a 10-minute podcast on child psychology 3 years ago, so they are suddenly ready to aggressively critique your entire parenting philosophy. It is profoundly arrogant. They love to swoop in, drop a massive life-altering diagnosis on your kid based on a 5-minute interaction at a family dinner, and then completely wash their hands of the actual day-to-day responsibility. But it goes even deeper than that single frustration. We are living in an era of relentless hyper-categorization. People are so desperate to put a definitive label on every single human behavior that we have completely forgotten how to let kids just be kids. Childhood is inherently weird, messy, and chaotic. Pretending to be people who are entirely different from you is a crucial developmental skill. It literally teaches empathy and helps you view the world through someone else's eyes. When a little girl pretends to be Batman or an old man with a mustache or a construction worker, she is not necessarily making a profound declaration about her permanent gender. She is just exploring her massive imagination. When adults rush in to staple permanent, heavily politicized adult labels onto innocent childhood play, they are not being supportive. They are being incredibly inappropriate and robbing the child of the freedom to just figure things out naturally without the crushing weight of adult expectations breathing down their neck. Uh, the internet absolutely agreed, though it took a minute to sort through the wild chaos of the comment section. One mildly irritating commenter tried to play both sides, suggesting that maybe the brother was just trying to be a fiercely protective ally because trans kids are under so much intense scrutiny right now, so his heart was technically in the right place, even if his execution was a complete mess. They essentially argued that the writer should take the brother's advice and start emotionally preparing for a coming out, just in case, to ensure they validate their kid. But the real experts, actual transgender and LGBTQ commenters stormed the thread to absolutely obliterate that lukewarm take. A trans commenter shut it down beautifully, pointing out that in their community, there is literally a prime directive to never tell someone they are trans before they realize it themselves, because forcing that label on someone prematurely can actually cause massive psychological harm and make them bury their authentic feelings even deeper. Even if the kid was displaying real, undeniable signs, an adult slapping a label on them is a massive violation of their journey. As one user pointed out, trans people do not just jump the gun over something as common as playing make believe, because that just puts an unnecessary stigma on gender during playtime. The most savage rebuttal came from another commenter who pointed out the pure idiocy of the brothers' logic. They noted that their own 4-year-old daughter spent a whole week demanding to be called Peter because she loved Spider Man, and the very next week loudly demanded to be referred to as her mermaid princessness. Another person chimed in laughing about how their kids spent months pretending to be an octopus. By the brothers' flawless logic, that kid is currently transitioning into a deep sea cephalopod. Someone else remembered how they spent a significant portion of their childhood pretending to be the terrifying T-Rex from the original Jurassic Park. Another user shared that they role-played as King Kong, Shaggy, and Simba, yet shockingly, they did not grow up to be a 25-foot-tall gorilla, an amateur hippie sleuth, or a talking sapient lion. Kids just do what they want with their vivid imaginations, and trying to read budding sexuality into innocent play is just gross. One commenter brilliantly pointed out that if you apply the brothers' logic universally, then the writer really needs to start worrying about their physical safety right now. The kid explicitly said she was a boy with absolutely no parents. As one user hilariously asked, should the parent just go ahead and die right now to leave the kid for the uncle to raise as a true orphan? The writer even joked back that the kid is not planning a brutal murder. She is just self-identifying as an orphan for the afternoon. The consensus was absolutely deafening. The gays have officially spoken, and this brother is undeniably exhausting. Being gay does not give you super knowledge. He is basically mansplaining the trans experience to a parent while completely ignoring the actual words cut of his niece's mouth. The final verdict is crystal clear. The writer is absolutely not the a-hole. They are doing a truly fantastic job encouraging their daughter's wild imagination and creating a safe, loving environment where she can explore whatever crazy character she wants without fear of judgment. The brother, on the other hand, needs a serious, immediate reality check. He has allowed his ego and his desperate need to be the smartest person in the room to completely override his common sense. How should the writer handle the inevitable follow-up text when the brother demands an apology for the eye roll? They have two options. The high road would be to just set a firm, unyielding boundary, stating that they will absolutely not discuss the child's psychological development with him anymore. Full stop. But if the writer wants to choose absolute violence and completely shatter his fragile glass house, they need to send this exact text message. I am so genuinely thrilled that you have taken such a passionate analytical interest in my daughter's make-believe games. Since you are the ultimate, all-knowing authority on her identity, and she clearly stated she is a boy with absolutely no parents, I have updated my will. If anything tragic happens to me, you are legally responsible for raising her. Please prepare your sensitive sinuses accordingly. Send it. Immediately put your phone on Do Not Disturb and watch him mentally scramble to backpedal. Kids are going to be kids, and sometimes a cape is just a cape. What do you guys think? Have you ever had a fiercely confident, totally childless relative try to psychologically diagnose your kids? Or do you remember pretending to be something totally unhinged when you were younger? Let me know your best stories in the comments below. And do not forget to smash that subscribe button for more insane Reddit drama. You sit down for a first date with a guy you met online, you are dressed up perfectly, and 5 minutes into the dinner, he leans across the table and asks, "Are you a man?" The writer of this wild post is a gorgeous, curvy woman with long hair wearing a cute dress and full makeup. She matches with a guy on a dating app, they agree to meet up for dinner, and everything starts off entirely normal. They walk into the restaurant, exchange the usual pleasantries, and place their orders for drinks and food. But then, barely 5 minutes into the conversation, out of nowhere, he drops that absolute bomb of a question. When she stares at him in pure, unfiltered shock, he actually tries to play it off like it is a totally casual observation. He swears up and down that he is not trying to offend her at all. His reasoning, he tells her that she is just so tall for a woman. Now, for context, the writer is about 5'10" or 178 centimeters for our international listeners. Tall, sure, but absolutely not some unheard of giant status. She is of Nordic heritage, but currently living in a country where the average woman is a good 20 centimeters shorter, so she is used to feeling a bit taller than average. But the kicker is that this guy was the exact same height as her. She felt like she had just been slapped across the face. So she did what any self-respecting person would do. She politely excused herself from the table, paid cash for her drink, canceled her dinner order, wished him a good rest of the night, and walked right out the door. At the time, she was upset and convinced the man was a total idiot. But after cooling down, she started second-guessing herself, wondering if she overreacted because his tone wasn't technically negative or accusatory, and she knows there is absolutely nothing wrong with being trans. She turned to the internet to ask, am I the a-hole for immediately bailing? Let us pause and really look at the mechanics of what just happened. Did she overreact? Some people might try to argue that dating apps are a minefield of misrepresentation, and he was just trying to clarify who he was sitting across from. Maybe he really is just that incredibly socially awkward and has zero filter. But we need to look deeper into the psychology of this guy. This was not a harmless question from a curious, bumbling guy. This was a highly calculated strike. It is a textbook example of negging. By questioning her gender right out of the gate, his primary intention was to completely destabilize her confidence. He wants her on the defensive, feeling deeply insecure about her height and her femininity, so she feels an overwhelming need to prove herself to him. It is a classic manipulation tactic from a guy who is deeply insecure about his own masculinity and feels intensely threatened by a woman who looks him straight in the eye without having to physically look up to him. One commenter perfectly described these types of bad actors as chaotic agents who use deliberately bizarre behavior to confuse you and capture your headspace. They want you to fixate on their weird behavior because if you are thinking about them, they are controlling your mental energy. This brings us to a massive underlying issue in modern dating culture. We are constantly, relentlessly conditioned to just gloss over these wild red flags in order to keep the peace. Women, especially, are taught from a very young age to be accommodating, to give people the benefit of the doubt, to have unending grace for others, and to never, ever make a scene. How many times have you sat through an excruciating date, enduring subtle insults disguised as jokes just because you didn't want to seem crazy or rude? We sacrifice our own internal peace just so someone else can remain comfortable. But keeping the peace is a complete myth when it costs you your self-respect. When someone shows you exactly who they are, especially within the first 5 minutes of meeting them, you have to believe them. The modern dating landscape has convinced too many people that putting up with subtle emotional manipulation is just part of the price of admission for finding a partner. It is incredibly unfortunate that women are so often made to feel like having any man is better than being alone. Walking away at the very first sign of blatant disrespect needs to be completely normalized. You do not owe anyone your time, full stop. Down in the forums, the internet was absolutely tearing this guy to shreds, and the debate was fiercely one-sided. Someone tried to offer a mild defense, suggesting a third possibility that maybe he thought it was a witty way to dispense an observation or a backhanded compliment about her height. But the rebuttal to that was absolutely brutal. Multiple users, including actual trans individuals, pointed out the glaring transphobia hidden inside his so-called harmless question. As one commenter flawlessly stated, he didn't even ask if she was a trans woman. He asked if she was a man. His question deeply invalidates trans identity because a tall trans woman is absolutely not a man, period. If he was genuinely asking out of a place of clumsy respect, he would have asked if she was transgender. Instead, he implied that trans women are just men living in secret. The absolute audacity is staggering. Another user nailed the pure absurdity of it by comparing it to asking someone if they are a tree. What kind of a dumbass starts off a conversation like that? The writer even joked back that she would have greatly preferred the tree question because at least it sparks curiosity along with the confusion. Several people pointed out that men seem to be getting weirder and more disturbed about height and dominance. Older users chimed in, noting that before smartphones and dating apps, no one ever asked about height before a date. Now, insecure guys who struggle to find partners blame it entirely on being under 6 feet tall. The community universally rallied behind the writer, praising her for trusting her gut and getting out of there before he could do any more psychological damage. One person asked how the guy reacted when she stood up to leave, and the writer revealed that he didn't say much, but resembled a kicked dog. They are always so genuinely shocked when they receive the correct negative reaction to their blatant insults. So, am I the a-hole? Absolutely, undeniably not. This guy threw out a massive flaming red flag, and the writer successfully dodged a catastrophic bullet. But let us talk about what happens next, because guys with this level of audacity usually try to text you the next day, acting like absolutely nothing happened. If he reaches out trying to secure a second date or demanding an explanation for why she walked out, she has two very clear choices. She could take the high road, completely ignore him, and just block his number, fiercely protecting her peace. Or she could choose absolute violence. If she wants to leave him utterly destroyed and rethinking his entire approach to human interaction, she should send this exact text. I was willing to overlook your glaring insecurities about being the exact same height as me, but I simply do not have the time to teach a grown adult basic social skills. The next time you want to neg a woman to make yourself feel bigger, maybe try dating someone shorter. Best of luck finding someone desperate enough to tolerate your weird mind games, then block him forever. Multiple commenters suggested that the absolute best response in the restaurant would have simply been to look him dead in the eye and say, "No, are you?" Let him sit and marinate in the idea that he now has to monitor and modulate his own behavior. So, what would you have done in this bizarre situation? Would you have stayed to finish the drink and demand an explanation, or would you have walked out even faster than she did? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and do not forget to hit that subscribe button for more wild Reddit drama.